Welcome back, Trailblazers. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to talk about a tool that has completely transformed the way I plan and navigate my hikes, AllTrails Plus. As a Trailheads ambassador and the organizer of the Yakima Valley Trekkers, I'm out on the trails a lot. One of my favorite features of AllTrails Plus is the ability to edit and create my own maps. Conditions change, fallen trees, washed out sections, or even a last-minute reroute. And with AllTrails Plus, I can adjust my route on the fly and share it with others so everyone stays informed and safe. AllTrails Plus also gives you offline maps, wrong turn alerts, and 3D trail previews to help you stay on track and make the most of your adventure. And the best part, you can get 30% off an AllTrails Plus membership with my exclusive link in the episode show notes. So whether you're planning your next big trek or just looking for a new trail to explore, AllTrails Plus has you covered. Check it out and let's hit the trail. Welcome to the Season 13 of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm your host, Ivan, and each week we're hitting the trail through conversations with extraordinary hikers from across the United States and beyond. Winter brings its own kind of magic to the outdoors. Quiet forests dusted in snow, frosty ridgelines glowing in soft morning light, and trails that ask us to slow down, bundle up, and move with intention. This season, I've had the privilege of sitting down with hikers whose stories reflect the same sense of resilience and wonder. From snow-covered summit pushes and cold weather camping lessons to mindful miles on peaceful winter trails, their voices remind us that adventure doesn't hibernate, it simply changes shape. So zip up your puffy, pour something warm into your mug, and get ready. Season 13 is here, and the conversations ahead are as bold, reflective, and inspiring as the winter landscape we love. For the Season 13 premiere of Hikes and Mikes, we're joined by Tina Grimm, model, artist, Thru-Hiker, and contestant on Season 2 of Netflix's survival series, Outlast, for a deeply moving conversation about identity, resilience, and the transformative power of wilderness. Tina shares how growing up with a survival-minded father sparked her lifelong love of the outdoors and why the trail allows her to show up in her truest, most grounded self beyond cameras, modeling, and expectation. She opens up about overcoming childhood hip dysplasia, how that experience shaped her grit on long miles and demanding terrain, and how time in the mountains became a sanctuary for healing after trauma. We also explore the emotional and psychological realities of competing on Outlast in the Alaskan wilderness, from team dynamics and inner battles to the unseen moments that never made it to screen, and how that experience changed the way she approaches challenge and trust. Tina reflects on thru-hiking the John Muir Trail with her husband and the lessons from her first solo backpacking trip, and the beautiful intersection of creativity and adventure in her upcoming novel, Meet Me in the Mountains, a love and nature story rooted in vulnerability, real trail experiences, and personal rediscovery. Without further ado, let's jump into this episode with our guest, Tina. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I have a really exciting guest with me today. She is a model, artist, and she was on season 2 of Outlast on Netflix, and she's going to be sharing all about her outdoor experiences as well as her experience on the show. Thank you, Tina, so much for coming on the podcast. We always like to start off by having our guests share a little bit about themselves and how they got started hiking.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm truly excited to share my experiences with everybody. I'm originally from a small town in Ohio called Rittman. Kudos to you if you actually know where that is, but no shame if you don't. Most people have no clue. But I've been in LA now for about 11 years pursuing the creative arts, and I've been an outdoor person ever since I was really little. Was very blessed with my father being into the outdoors. He was a survivalist, so there were a lot of summers of camping and hiking and fishing. And as I grew older, I just fell in love with it even more. I was the adventurous, weird little kid that had a wild imagination and would always go and explore and create little stories while I'm out there by myself, which kind of led into my love for the arts. And then I didn't really start falling in love with backpacking until I met my husband, because unfortunately, I never got to go on any grandiose adventure with my father before he passed away. I'm very grateful that I was introduced to like the thru-hiking community, but I'm kind of bummed that that happened later in my life in my late 30s, because now I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I have all this stuff that I want to see and all the stuff that I want to hike, and I got limited time.
Well, I will say, Tina, you've really kicked it off with some incredible through hikes, and we'll be touching on your journey on the JMT. And one thing that really I've noticed over the last couple of years is how LA has a really great hiking scene. You don't have to travel far in order to visit some amazing trails. You know, you yourself are creative, and I feel like a lot of your presence in LA has really been with modeling. How does that world full of cameras, structure, and exterior perception contrast with the raw, unfiltered version of you on the trail?
It's night and day. They're completely two different entities. I have a lot of people tell me in the industry that I'm like a chameleon. I actually did a shoot a couple of weeks ago where there's a lot of repeat people that I meet in the industry. They didn't even know I was there. They're like, wait, what? That was you? So the interesting thing about being in front of the camera is I can be somebody completely different. There's no pressure. There's no expectations. There's no need for me to kind of like hide who I am. So I become somebody else. And being in the outdoors, I think, is my truest self, where I can accept who I am and be dorky and be nerdy, if that makes sense. I'm a huge introvert, which is crazy because people look at me in my modeling pictures. You know, the recent one, I'm on a rooftop in like Victoria's Secret garb. And they're like, how can you say that you're a shy person when you're prancing around in a bedazzled bra? And it's just because, yeah, in front of the camera in that world, it doesn't matter who I am. And I kind of put on a mask. And when you meet me in real life, I can be kind of reserved and kind of shy. And the funny thing is, in the industry, not just with modeling, but in acting as well, I've met a lot of different creatives that are the same way. They're very, very shy in real life, but then they get in front of the camera and they're like a completely different person. So with the contrast, there's this huge divide between the two. So it's kind of like a split personality in a sense. In the arts, I can be whoever I want to be. I can be outgoing and all of this. And then on the trail, yes, I can still be that outgoing, but I can truly be who I am, if that makes sense.
Oh, no, it definitely does. And I think a lot of people resonate with that. Tina, one thing that really caught my attention is just your journey to being able to crush those 20-mile days. You've been open about being diagnosed with severe hip dysplasia at birth, and the doctors weren't sure if you'd be able to walk properly. How did those early hurdles kind of shape your relationship with challenges and the outdoors?
So when I was younger, I was diagnosed with severe hip dysplasia and I had to wear a lot of corrective braces. And I was very young during that time, so I have very little memories of actually experiencing that. But even from a young age, I remember hearing my mom tell me stories of when we hit the stage where you start to learn to walk and explore. My brother, who was the same age, she said she'd be sitting there and he would just take off and walk in the other room. And then here I would be in this brace that really constricted my movement. I couldn't get up and stand and walk, but I didn't want to be left alone. So I would literally army crawl to keep up with him. And I've kind of carried that with me my entire development, you know, through childhood, teenager, young adulthood, now adulthood, that, you know, resilience is always there. And I do remember when I was little being in a doctor's office and kind of hearing my parents talk with the pediatrician and them saying, you know, she's got this severe hip dysplasia. We're going to do what we can. We'll put the braces on. We'll try to correct it, but you might want to limit her activity. We're hoping that everything will heal great, but as she ages, it might prevent her from being active, running, playing sports, what have you. And so I think early on, my parents tried to shelter me a little bit from that. And when you're a child, you're like, oh, well, I'm associating it with, okay, if I do this, it's going to hurt. And when you're a kid, you don't want anything that inflicts pain. So you're kind of just like, oh, kind of stay away from it. But as I got older, I felt like, you know what, I'm just going to try to do it anyway. You know, kind of when I hit high school, it was this life is too short mentality. Even when you're in high school, I mean, you have your entire life to live. I guess the way I see it is your only limitations are those that you put upon yourself. And so when I go out and I do hikes, or I'm an avid runner, I'm a marathoner, yes, there's going to be some discomfort, but for a thru-hiker, discomfort means progress, right? There's a purpose to the pain. So yeah, you throw on a 30, 35 pound pack when you start hiking up a trail and you're hit with like 1,000-foot incline spread out within the first mile. It's a slog. You know it's going to suck. You're at your heaviest. And the further you get, the more you start feeling the shoulders are aching from the weight. your thighs are starting to burn from the climb, but that just means you're pushing yourself further. And so going through the hip dysplasia thing and being told that, yeah, you might not be able to do this, or there might be consequences of your actions later in life, it's really about just pushing forward and pushing through it. I'm still very active. I think I would be a pretty sad person if I couldn't do half the things that I've been doing that I was told that I shouldn't or couldn't be doing, because being an outdoorsy active person is a huge part of who I am. So that whole thing that I went through as a child has definitely made me extremely resilient. And again, like I had said, your only limitations are those that you put upon yourself.
I love that. And I have to remember that, those challenging moments where your shoulders are aching, your thighs are burning, your calves are burning, that's a moment that's going to pass, but it's progress on your way to where your destination is. That was really beautifully said. And I think sometimes folks, especially when they're first starting off hiking, those challenging moments do make you question, like, is this for me? Am I really cut out to do this? But if you look at it as making progress, I think that's going to help you, crush those 20-mile days just like you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the beautiful thing too about, lessons that you learn on the trail or that the trail teaches you, it can be a metaphor for life in general. The discomfort is progress. There's a reason for the pain. It's the same thing for everything that you do in life. If you're hit with a challenge and you're kind of questioning, oh my gosh, can I do this? Am I going to land this interview and get this job? You just got to go for it, and you got to keep trying, one foot in front of the other, mile by mile. Just take it at an easy pace and just know that it'll be worth it if you just keep trying.
And Tina, I feel like a lot of us that go out to the outdoors, it's really a place to help with healing. And you've been open about surviving and overcoming severe trauma. And for many of us, the trail is a form of therapy. How has the wilderness specifically helped you rebuild your trust in yourself and your own strength?
It's helped a lot. The trail is, I like to say, it's my sanctuary. It is the best therapist that I can ever have. And the trail gives and takes. And going out in the wilderness is a risk, just like having a new relationship. And so being out there and also comparing it to what I went through with the domestic violence that I survived, you really learn to read your surroundings and understand what it feels like to be safe and what doesn't. And I say that meaning for my personal situation, I was young, naive, whatever, it's a moot point. But in that situation, I wanted to look at it as, I don't want to be a victim. I want to be a survivor. Now, you can have both hand in hand, but it's more of, if I can learn from this, if I can be able to read things a certain way, then I can better myself and prepare myself later down in the road. And it's the same thing in being in the wilderness. You learn to listen to your instincts. The trail doesn't lie to you. It doesn't ask you to be smaller or quieter. It's just there. So it requires a lot of honesty and preparation and presence. And so step by step, you discover that you truly can rely on yourself. And so in going through what I went through and just kind of escaping to the outdoors, it's a place to really just breathe and exist. And it's a powerful thing to know that you can truly rely on yourself and take care of yourself. And hiking really taught me about rebuilding trust, and that it's okay to accept what happened. It's okay not to pretend that things didn't happen. Because there was a time when I'm just like, oh, if I don't talk about it, I'll be fine. But when you're on a trail and you encounter some kind of challenging obstacle, like you're going somewhere and there's a massive avalanche field and you lost the trail and you have no idea which direction you got to go, but you got to figure it out. You can't just be like, oh, nope, I'm just going to turn around and go back, or I'm going to forget that I saw that and I'm going to go this way. You have to accept it, just like any challenges or traumas that you have faced in your life. And you just have to find a way through it. And so I really do mirror a lot of that experience with being in the outdoors, the challenges that may come up. And like I said, nature is truly a therapist for me, and a lot of people as well. Just, it's kind of like wiping the slate clean in a sense as well. It's the proverbial reset button. It's when you're out there, you can discover a lot about yourself, and you can also let a lot of stuff go. And so if that kind of makes sense, it's a character builder too. And so I owe a lot of my healing, and not just from that huge event in my life, but just anytime I'm feeling down, anytime I'm feeling sad, anytime I'm angry. And it doesn't even have to be a massive trail. If I'm really excited about something, or if I'm really pissed off about something, I'll put on my running shoes and go run a couple miles just to let out that energy. Just be like, forget this. I'm just going to go and be outside. Or if I'm really sad and I just kind of need some alone time, I'll put on my hiking shoes and grab my backpack and I'll go hike up a local trail and just sit on the mountain for a couple hours and just decompress. It's very healing. There's kind of like an unspoken feeling when you're out there, and those who are familiar with it, as I'm sure you are, know that once you're there, nothing else matters. You can finally just breathe and just let everything else go.
Can't agree with you more. Feel like for me, regardless of what's like going on in my professional or personal life, being outside and being out in nature definitely just like silences everything and gives me the clarity that I need and the break that I need in order to really kind of figure out the challenges ahead and figure out the best approach. And the statement that you said just hit so well. The trail doesn't lie to you. And I just love that statement and what it means, because that is so spot on when it comes to hiking, backpacking, or just being outside. I really love that. Now, Tina, one thing that I was really excited to speak with you about is you recently shared that you're going to be a first-time novelist. For listeners who haven't heard or seen on your social media, can you introduce Meet Me in the Mountains? What's the heart of the story? What inspired you to write this particular love and adventure narrative?
Yeah, I'm super pumped about it. I'm really excited to share it. Before I dive into what it's about, what inspired me to do it is I'm a hopeless romantic to begin with, and I love the outdoors, and I don't feel like there's enough representation in the outdoor community for stories in general. I mean, we have true stories, there's some crime stories out there, there's some supernatural stuff, but just mainstream, there's not enough. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I'm sure it is. And I'm sure there's dozens of books out there that I would love to read that I just don't know. But a few years ago, I read a book. Well, actually, first I saw Netflix had made a movie of it called Happiness for Beginners. And I really enjoyed it. And then, of course, I found out it was based on a book. So I went out and bought the book. It's by Catherine Center. And that one is essentially about a divorcee who wants to reinvent herself. And she signs up for this nature retreat, and just all these crazy things happen. And it was very clear that the author is familiar with the outdoor community. And then the light bulb kind of flickered on a little bit. And I'm like, you know what? This is brilliant. This is somebody who loves you. It's very clear that they love the outdoors. They know a lot about it. They sneak in these little nuances that if you are a thru-hiker, backpacker, just day hiker, whatever, you're like, aha, yep. So I really wanted to have a little sense of my own. And I've always been a storyteller. I've always been a creative. So Meet Me in the Mountains, it's a story about love, loss, healing, and really just rediscovering who you are when life upends everything you thought you knew. It centers around the main character. Her name's Catherine O'Brien. She's a wildlife photographer who's always spent most at home, outdoors. She's been chasing all of these different opportunities to photograph, and she's been lately feeling like something's missing. She loves the solitude, but now it's like, do I really always want to be alone? In a little twist, there's this comedic interaction, I won't spoil anything, that kind of sabotages a huge experience that she's been planning. And she crossed paths with this well-known travel blogger. And what starts out is this playful rivalry kind of sparks an unexpected connection that neither one of them really knows what to do with. And so in the beginning, what begins as like irritation and curiosity, it becomes a story at the core of just seeing and being seen. And so there's a lot of underlining messages within. It's really just a story about finding strength after heartbreak, letting go of who you thought you had to be, opening up yourself to connection even when it scares you, and discovering that sometimes the wilderness isn't the only place capable of healing you. I just talked about being outdoors is therapy, but sometimes you need a little bit more than that too. And so it's just really an emotional, romantic, introspective journey that blends adventure with vulnerability. You have two people navigating their own wounds. You have two people from different walks of life, but they're both hurting. And they're meeting in the same mountains to face what they've ultimately been running from. And it's a lot about me and my personal stories. There's 4 main characters, and I think there's a little bit of me in each one. So it is mostly a fictitious story. I mean, I've feathered in a lot of my own experiences experiences. So it's kind of fun. Like I've had some friends pre-read it and I told them, pick out which scenarios you think are real and pick out which ones you think are fake. And the ones that are kind of more outlandish and crazy, they're like, yeah, you made that up. That's no way that could have happened. And I'm like, actually, those are the ones that did happen. And it circles around the Ray Lakes Loop in Kings Canyon. I wanted to do it around a very specific special place that I love to go to. Because another thing that irks me when I do watch something or read something that's based on a real place is you can tell in the description that the writer has never actually been there. And that bugs the crap out of me. So I really just wanted to dive deep. I want the readers to be able to, feel the sun in their skin, hear the wind whistling through the trees, smell the pine. I want it to be a very sensible experience for the reader as well. And I just want them to fall in love with not only the outdoors, but about themselves. Because like I said, there's a lot of undertones and morals, and I'm just super excited to get this out there. I'm in the final stages of going through my own read. And then I'm currently hopefully working with an editor very soon to have it, gone through the works on that and then shop for publication. So fingers crossed that all goes well.
Yeah, I think we need more of that because you're so right. Like a lot of the books that I've seen when it comes to the outdoors, it has that like true crime category or supernatural category. But, one thing that surprised me last year, Tina, is one of our most popular episodes. And I think it shows that people really do want that love and adventure narrative is our Valentine's Day episode of two Thru-Hikers that met on the PCT. Was one of the more popular episodes that we've had to date. So I'm really excited that you've been able to kind of share your own personal experiences in this book and Meet Me in the Mountains. Now, one thing, you described the manuscript as a year of late nights, countless edits, and deep dedication. Was there a moment through the creative process that you realized that this needed to become a full novel?
Yeah, I've had the idea for years. It got sparked when I went on my first solo adventure because you're by yourself a lot and you have a lot to think about. And I had already been thinking about, representation of love stories and what have you in the outdoor community. And when I had the idea spark, it was when I was going through like deep into the casting process of Outlast. So I had a lot of stuff going on in my life at the moment. So I kind of had to put the idea on the back burner for about 6 months. And when I started to get into it, I was really impressed with myself too, because I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's a great thing. I mean, yes, everybody should love what they do, but we're also, as an artist, our own worst critic. So I couldn't tell you how many times that I've written something and read it and it's like, oh, this is crap. I've painted something and looked at it, oh, this is crap. But when I was writing this and really getting into like the prologue and the first chapter, I'm like scratching my head like, wow, this came out of my brain. Like, this is actually really good. So I was like, this has to be something. And then, of course, why dream small, set the bar big. And I'm like, what if this is like the next Notebook, but in the outdoors? Or what if this is made into like a film and maybe Glenn Powell will play like the main character? And like, so the wheels are just turning and turning. And so as I kept going, what I started when the process is what I would do is I would write and then I would stop and then I'd go back because I'd be so excited to see the flow. And so I'd write a little bit, go back, read it, and then write a little bit. But this process would keep me up so late at night because I would write maybe a page and then spend the next 3 hours reading it over and over and over. So I told myself, I'm like, I got to stop doing this. I just got to lay it out and write it and then start to go back and adjust things when it's needed to be done. It's a very beautiful thing and a super exciting thing as well when you have something that, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't believe in stuff that you do, but again, going back to being a creative, we always hate on our stuff all the time. But when you really feel so deeply about something that you're working on, you just know, like, I have to see this through. I have to finish it. And so I set myself a goal too of, okay, I started putting it down on paper back in January of this year. And then I told myself probably about April that it needs to be publisher ready by the end of this year. So by December, by or before Christmas, it's got to be ready to be sent off, and Godspeed, whatever happens to it, happens to it. I've stuck by that. And I'm very proud of myself for sticking to the timeline. And we're getting down to the nitty gritty now. And I really do hope that others believe in it as much as I do.
We'd love to have you back on the podcast, Tina, when the book does come out and share a little bit more about it with our audience, because I know it's going to happen and I'm just looking forward to being able to purchase it and read it myself.
Thank you. I would be honored to come back.
Tina, you mentioned that this kind of started when you were going through the casting process of Outlast. And for folks that don't know or haven't had a chance to see Outlast, can you share a little bit about it? But also, what appealed to you about applying and participating in the second season?
Yeah. So Outlast, for those that aren't familiar with it, it is a survival-based reality show. It's on Netflix. There's currently 2 seasons. I was fortunate enough to be on season 2. And my husband Benji and I love watching outdoor survival-related reality TV. Naked and Afraid is a guilty pleasure. Alone is like the GOAT. And I never considered myself going on Alone, just because even though I have a lot of other skill sets of shelter building and I'm totally fine being by myself, that would never be an issue. But I grew up with my father being a fisherman. So I learned how to fish. I learned how to, prep a fish, fillet it, all of that stuff. But I never hunted. And so for Alone, you need to be a hunter. And I'm just not. And it's not that I wouldn't be capable of doing it. It's just kind of not my thing. So we stumbled upon the show called Outlast. And we binge watched it over like 3 days. And when we watched the finale, I looked over at my husband on the couch and I'm like, I could do this. And I don't think it really registered to him that I was being serious because he's like, oh, yeah, And I'm like, no, like, I want to audition for season 2. I need to find out how to get on the show. I can do this. And he was like, okay. It was still kind of like he wasn't quite there, but I'm just like the wheels were just turning and that steam engine was just like going on full throttle. And I just started obsessing over finding, okay, how am I going to get on this show? I started Googling, where the application would be, kept hitting dead ends because the show had just aired. And so there wasn't that much information out about it. So then I started hitting up friends that were in production. Like, hey, have you guys heard of the show on Netflix? Do you know who cast it? And I finally, after about a month, got a hit on a casting agency, reached out to them, sent them a little blurb about myself, sent some photographs. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll add your stuff to the application. I'm like, okay, cool. And then like a month went by and nothing happened. So I'm like, okay. And then I saw a cast member from season 1 post, oh, now accepting applications for season 2. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. That casting company is not the same people that I sent my stuff to last month. Turns out they switched companies, but I applied through that one and let everything out in the universe to see what happened. I do genuinely believe that I manifested the opportunity. I don't know, if you or anybody else believes in that, but I just kept going for it. Like, no, I set my mind on it. This is what I want to do. I'm going to figure out how to do it. I'm just going to do the best that I can to be able to be involved in this thing. And then I got the first phone call and I just thought it was a joke at first because months went by after I applied for the show and I heard nothing. I'm like, oh, well, I'm just another number, another cog in the wheel. And the casting agent was like, so yeah, we got your application and we would love to sit down and have a chat with you. And I'm like, oh. And then it was just, it went off from there. And I was like, wow, this is really, really cool.
And I got to ask, because I feel like when you do something intense, whether it's going out in a survival situation on a show in Alaska, or maybe even starting a thru-hike or a solo backpacking adventure, those first 24 hours are very vivid and almost surreal. Can you kind of walk us through those first 24 hours on location? What were some of your biggest fears, your immediate goals, and how did the reality differ from your expectations?
Yeah. So, well, first off, do you mean the first 24 hours, like I actually got there off the plane, or the first 24 hours of being in the game?
In the game, yeah.
Because there's a little bit of a difference in the game. Okay. Yeah. Because the first 24 hours, there was the excitement, but then you sat in a hotel for like a week and a half and it was like uneventful. But yeah, the first 24 hours on the show was, again, it was very surreal. And the crazy thing too is, so what they do is they kept us locked up in a hotel for almost 2 weeks. It was supposed to be a lot shorter than that, but there was a big storm that came through and it wasn't safe for anybody to be on the location. And so we're coming down, we're all coming down one by one down this big ramp into an open boat, just literally just benches. And I'm a firm believer in not judging a book by its cover because there's so many more layers to people, but that all went out the window. That just went out because you're sitting on this boat and you're looking around and out of the 16 people, 3 of those people are going to be on your team. And that's presumably who you're going to be with through the duration of the game, what may happen. And so you're kind of looking at them like, all right, mind you, we're sitting in the rain. It's like pouring down rain because we don't have a cover over us on the boat. And it's about an hour ride to the location. And you're just judging like, oh, that guy doesn't have a proper rain jacket on. He's getting wet and miserable already. And we're not even there yet. I don't want them on my team because they don't know what they're doing. Or, oh, this person has logger boots on. They're not wearing muck boots. Their socks are probably wet. They don't know what they're doing. I don't want them on my team. And so it was kind of crazy because for me, I felt like I was becoming a hypocrite because I'm like, I don't like to judge people at first appearance, but here I am picking them apart on their gear choices. And I think my biggest fear was people doing the same to me. And I know they were. I mean, I stuck out like a sore thumb. Even though I had the proper gear because I've been doing the outdoor stuff for quite a while now, I didn't really look like I belonged per se. And nobody knew anything about each other. So nobody aside from production knew that I'm a model from LA. If they would have known that, they would have been like, oh no, we definitely don't want that girl. So I was very afraid of getting on a team that I didn't really get along with. I am, as I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of an introvert. I'm very shy. And I know a lot of times on first impressions, that can be really bad. Like, well, is she stuck up? Is she too good? Is that why she's not talking to us? Or is she super quiet because she really doesn't know what the heck she's doing? And so when we started to pick captains, it was all just random. They picked 4 people and then they started picking teams. And I hated that part of the experience because they lined everybody up. And it took me back to grade school, like in gym class, where they're picking teams for dodgeball. And you're like, I do not want to be the last kid picked. And it was very uncomfortable. Thankfully, I was about middle of the row getting picked. So I wasn't last, but it was definitely really nerve wracking and hard because, yeah, my biggest fear in that moment was, am I going to be put with people that I can actually get along with?
Yeah, and I'll admit, I was a big Team Delta fan. I feel like the dynamic that your team had was one of the best, if not the best, team dynamic. You know, there's some growing pains when you do put strangers together, but you guys really were kind of like a well-oiled machine towards the end of the season. And I felt like everybody kind of played a role in keeping everyone motivated and safe. What was an internal skill or mindset that ended up becoming your biggest asset once you were actually there?
I think for me, it was just being myself. I knew right from day one when I applied for the show that I wanted to keep my integrity. I didn't want to create this facade. You know, it would be easy for me to do because I've been in the industry for so many years. You know, I get in front of the camera and I could, boop, I'm somebody else. But for this, I didn't want to do that because at the end of the day, if you pretend to be somebody else, your true self is going to eventually come out, especially in a situation like that where you're really relying on other people to work together to survive. So for me, it was very, very important just to be myself, be the one that listened when there were issues, be the one that spoke up when things needed to be said. And the guys all told me that I was the glue that held the team together. They're like, Tina, if you weren't on the team, we probably would have killed each other within the first couple days. And even Eric had said, yeah, I was like the Mother Teresa. I understood where everybody was coming from. I didn't judge anybody when they would have arguments. I didn't insert myself in their arguments. If it didn't involve me, and it drove production insane because there were times they're like, you should go say something. And I'm like, nope, they're grown men. They can work it out themselves. Obviously, if it escalates to something where I feel there needs to be some kind of intervention, then I will. But I think that's what made our dynamic so well. You know, it's crazy because we even said this many times. We're like the band of misfits. If we would have seen each other outside of the show situation, we probably wouldn't have given each other the time of day. We're just all from different walks of life. We all like look differently. But in reality, we just fell in sync. There was never a moment where none of us knew what we were doing. We all, like you had said, just fell in line and got things done. And that was a beautiful part of it because we got very lucky. You know, the first day we're all kind of scratching our heads like, is this going to work? Oh my gosh. And I never thought being on a team full of men was going to be an issue because I've had that question come up. Well, were you uncomfortable because you were the only girl? I'm a tomboy at heart. I've grown up a tomboy. The majority of my friends are guys. That was just like, I'm just one of the guys. They even nicknamed me Bro T. Like I was one of the dudes. And so it was great. I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to experience that with. We got very lucky.
And Tina, you know, not only are you a model, but you're also an actress and you've participated in huge blockbusters as well as independent films. But Outlast being an unscripted survival TV show, what was the biggest shock to your system that the cameras didn't quite capture? Because I imagine, you know, there's only 8 episodes, but the amount of footage that they collected and recorded must have just been outstanding. For you, was it the cold? Was it the hunger towards the end? Or maybe even that psychological toll of it being a game?
So going into it, I was a little concerned. I kind of psyched myself out a little bit because I do have a condition. Production didn't know about it. called Raynaud's, where it's not life-threatening or anything like that, but it's just this weird disorder that they still don't really understand, where essentially your body overreacts to temperature, mainly colder temps. So your circulation slows down and your fingers and toes might lose their coloring and go numb. And so I was very worried about that because I'm like, oh my gosh, if I have an episode out there, am I going to get frostbite or is something going to happen? And so I was very focused on getting the proper gear to protect me from that. And I actually only had one scare. I think it was like within the first week, I woke up and my toes were numb and I was freaking out because I literally, like, I could sit there and just slap the crap out of my feet and I couldn't feel a thing. And I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? I don't want to go out like this. But then I ended up found out that it was because I was sleeping in my boots and I was preventing circulation. And my mindset was, well, my boots are insulated. It'll help keep my feet warmer. No. So I remedied that situation. I was good. For the hunger, I'm used to intermittent fasting. And also when preparing for a big fashion shoot, I'll go on a juice cleanse for anywhere from 5 to 10 days leading up to that. And I've been doing that for years. So my body is very used to not getting a high caloric intake and I can suppress those hunger pains and really just ignore that. So that wasn't an issue. It was psychological for me and it didn't really hit until the end because I loved every moment of being out there. Like even when it rained for days and you were wet and presumably miserable, I was just living it up. And for me, it's because I love the outdoors. I spent a lot of time in the outdoors, weeks on end. I did the JMT in my solo prior to all of that. So I've spent multiple weeks in the wilderness. And the same thing for Brendan. I mean, we nicknamed him Mountain Man because that's literally who he is. I mean, he sleeps under a firelit stump, like in the middle of the winter time. And so for us, it was like, this is who we are at the core. This is what we love. So there was never an issue about being miserable, even when things on the outside looked like they were bad. It was at the end, I had some issues with constant butting of the heads between my brain and my body. So for me, I'm a very active person. I'm a marathoner. I'm a long distance thru-hiker. And so I have the endurance. And at the end of the show, when we're put up against this massive endurance challenge, I started to be at conflict with myself because everything that I thought I knew went out the window. Going through the final challenge and physically having my body break down, like my legs feeling like they were turning to cement because I was so fatigued. I mean, it was like I looked Medusa right in the eyes and I was turning to stone. It was so frustrating. But my brain was like, well, don't be a wimp. Like, you can do this. You just hiked a couple 100 miles in the Sierra Nevada, with limited food, and you just ran 26.2 miles in a marathon. Like, don't be a weenie. But your body's like, but you don't understand, brain. When you do all those things, you're fully hydrated. You're fully nourished. I am starving and I am very dehydrated right now and I don't want to do anything. And so that's what hit me as the hardest part of the entire game, was having that internal conflict between my brain and my physical body, because I wanted to perform and I couldn't. And there was nothing that I could do about it. There was nothing that anybody could do about it. And so that's where the frustrations and the tears started coming out, because I didn't want to fail. And it's a scary thing for anybody. You don't want to fail at anything that you do.
Yeah. And I think everybody that does long distance hiking, or even like you said, marathons, like a lot of it does come to nutrition and hydration. And I've definitely been on some grueling hikes where I'm like, this is supposed to be a little bit easier for me. Like, what's going on? And then it isn't until I look back and I'm like, oh, I definitely did not hydrate well leading up to this hike or leading up to the summit. And I can only imagine that is magnified in your case when you're out there for weeks on end, just trying to survive and do it on a low calorie diet and, having to boil water anytime you need it to drink. So I can only imagine what that must have been like. But one thing I noticed, Tina, and I think maybe others who've watched both seasons of Outlast, is, they have to edit down all the footage that they get in order to make the 8 episodes. And I felt that towards the end, there was these characters where Team Delta were the good guys and the Texas boys were kind of the villains. And for you, how did you reconcile seeing that edited character that people saw on Netflix versus the real Tina? And what do you wish audience knew about your time out there that didn't make the cut?
Oh boy, this is a bit of a tender topic. So I don't manager's job at all. I mean, there's 16 of us. We're out there for almost a month. There's thousands upon thousands of hours of footage that they have to chisel down to 8 like 45-minute episodes. So I don't envy that job, and I don't have any ill feelings towards anybody. A lot of production became my friends afterwards. But this is kind of the rub with reality TV. So it is real when you're out there. Everything that we experienced out there was 100% in the moment, real time. But you kind of forget, and shame on me, I've been in the industry for several years. I should have known a little better, but they have the power to edit however they want to, trim things down, like shuffle things that may have happened in day 1 and put it on day 15. They have the power to tell whatever narrative they want to, because that's the beauty of TV. Like it or not, that's what they do to tell their story. And I definitely feel like I got a little bit of the short end of the stick for my character persona. I'm very grateful that they told the story of my mom, because I really did. That was important for me to get that out there, because I had many reasons for going on the show, but that was the number one reason, to win and try to get the money to help with my mom's expenses as we deal with her dementia journey. But I also wanted to represent women in the outdoors, because I feel like we kind of get pushed on the back burner a little bit as well in our capabilities. And so there were quite a bit of things that didn't make the final cut. I do not know why. There's only a few people that I'm sure do. But I caught a fish. That was like my hero moment, and nobody ever saw it. Nobody knew that I caught a fish and we ate it for several days. Nobody knew. I was the only one, I think, on the entire show, not just in Camp Delta, that made a cot to sleep on. I bushcrafted a cot with Eric's help, because we only had one hatchet. So while we were both getting the timber that we needed, he was working on pine boughs for the shelter, and I was trying to make the notches in my cot. That never saw the light of day. It was super comfy too. I was like, even the camera guys were like, oh, let me lay in it. Let me see how it is. Like, wow, this is like a spring mattress. This is really awesome. I'm like, yeah, it's really cool. There was several teaching moments that I had too, specifically with Joseph, where I think it was either the afternoon of day 1 or it might have been day 2. We were out searching for fresh water source. And where our camp was, we were on a peninsula, so we were surrounded by ocean water. But as we're walking into the tree line, you could see all the little streams emptying into the bay. And so I was telling Joseph, like, this is how we find the fresh water source. We're going to follow all of these little streams, and it will eventually lead us to somewhere else where we can get the fresh water. And we followed one that led us deep into the tree line, and it was actually an underground stream that was coming out from this big, massive tree. And I actually crawled down underneath the tree, because it was really open, because the water was slowly eroding out from underneath it. And it was just a cool teaching moment too. Like, hey, look, here's our fresh water. And then I remember Joseph saying, well, it's brown. Are you sure it's good to drink? And I'm like, oh, well, it's tannin water. It's brown because it's running through the tree roots, but it's totally safe to drink. It's all good. That never saw the light of day. And so I think the one that hurt the most was the fish thing, because I caught that fish and I'm like, yeah, oh my gosh. And maybe I should have blown it up a little bit more. Maybe I made too big of a deal out of it. I don't know why they chose not to show it and what they chose to show. I am, again, grateful that they told the story with my mom. I am grateful that they showed my knowledge with herbalism. I think it was episode 7. They showed me making a tea out of the dock root to help remedy Joseph's and I's little digestive issue that we were having. And so I wasn't a total lop, but they definitely made it seem like I was the least bit one that was actually like contributing to the team. And so that kind of stung. Again, I don't know why they made those decisions. Part of me, trying to look on the bright side of things, like, oh, well, maybe if they have like a redemption season, this is why, because they painted me to be like, this person that really didn't do much, but then had a massive breakdown at the end. And now she can like show up and like kick some major ass, and it'll be like a total like underdog story. I don't know. But that was definitely hard to watch for me, to know what I was able to do out there. And it was hard for my teammates too. When we were watching them as the episodes dropped, Brendan and Eric hit me up and they're like, what's with the fish? And I'm like, I don't know. And they felt bad too, because they all had their highlights of different things. And my biggest moment just never saw the light of day. Just never did.
Oh, wow. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, you would think that would have made the final cut, because I feel like all the big hunting and fishing stuff kind of made it. So I'm glad you're able to share that, and props to you, because yeah, that must have been huge for the team. And I will say, I chuckled when you made that tea to help you and Joseph out.
Oh yeah, they were calling it Tina's poop tea. The Tina's poop tea. But hey, it's a serious thing when you're out there. I mean, that could take you out of the game. And in season 1, it took out Angie on Charlie team. So it can be a very scary thing if you don't have clean pipes.
Now, Tina, after you came back from filming, how did that experience change your outdoor practice, maybe your mindset or life direction? Did you walk away with any new insights about how you approach adventure or everyday life?
For me, it definitely made me want to see more. I had never been to Alaska. I've always wanted to go. And I've kind of been in my own bubble a lot of times when I adventure out. I love the Sierra Nevadas, so that's typically my go-to. And so leaving that show and being exposed to that areas and being there, it really has broadened my horizons to want to see more different places. But also personally, I think it really has taught me to be a little bit more self-forgiving. I don't want to say I felt responsible for the outcome of the show. I don't want to spoil it, but I'm sure those listening will understand where I'm getting from either way. But there were a lot of variables that led to our ending. But there was still a part of me that really carried a lot of that emotional burden. And I beat myself up about it for weeks after coming home from the show. Even the guys would call me and be like, you just need to stop it. Just stop it. Like, there are so many other things that happened as to why that outcome happened. It's not you. But then also developing a thicker skin and really not caring what others think. Because I did get a lot of negativity from viewers. Unfortunately, I think several people from the show, it wasn't just me, but a lot of the other cast members, getting back to Drake and Drew from Bravo. Yeah, I feel bad because they were painted as the villain. And they're like great guys. I mean, they're super nice. I actually got to meet Drew in person back in April for a retreat that I did, and just such a cool guy. They all were. And so I'm like, I feel bad. I'm bitching about a fish and you guys got treated like you were like the scum of the earth. So I can only imagine what you guys are getting. But some of that negativity really got under my skin. But as I kind of journeyed through that, I learned that it doesn't matter what other people think of you in that sense. I know what I did out there. I know who I am at the core of it all. And strangers' opinions don't matter. And so I think for me, just the show in general, like I said, not only igniting a stronger flame of wanting to explore more places, but then also, just being a little kinder to myself.
And I got to recommend the show to folks. If you haven't had a chance, definitely see not just season 2, but go back and see season 1 of Outlast on Netflix. Yeah, it was really great kind of seeing the progression of all the teams and up to the season finale, and really appreciate you sharing those candid moments that didn't make the show. And I do hope they make a redemption season so you can go back out there and hopefully capture those moments where you're catching fish and doing so much more. Now, Tina, one thing that you've mentioned a few times on the episode already is hiking the JMT. Both you and your husband are through hikers, and the JMT had its own set of challenges because I feel like you faced monsoons, altitude sickness, and then it's just 22 days of being together in a tent. And they say don't renovate a house with your spouse if you want to stay married. Does that same rule apply to a through hike? And how did those shared suffering experiences kind of bring you guys closer together?
It definitely bonded us. When we did the JMT, we had been married for a couple of years at that point. And the funny thing is about the JMT is, I've been backpacking with my husband for years leading up to this. And I've always had this grandiose dream ever since getting introduced to through hiking to do the Triple Crown, starting with the PCT. And being my mom's caretaker now, I'm very limited to when I can do that. It's not a matter of if, I will do it. When I set my mind on something, it will get done. It's just a matter of when. And so when I discovered the JMT, I'm like, oh, this is doable. It's, 3 weeks. I can manage to be away for that long. And when I approached my husband, he's like, I think that could be your solo. I really don't know if I want to do that. And I'm like, really? Why? He's like, because people who do long through hikes like that are just trying to prove something to themselves, or they want to, brag about doing it. And I'm like, oh, no. You are totally looking at this with the wrong perspective. Like, take off those Coke glasses or whatever it is that, is your blinders. I said, it's just about the journey and the adventure and just being out there for so long and just, yes, it's an accomplishment, but it's not a braggadocious thing. It's like, I genuinely want to do this. If I'm proving it to anybody, it's improving it to myself to know that I can do this. And so he's like, oh, whatever. So I spent like a year planning this thing, bought several books, reading on it, getting a bunch of maps, charting it, figuring out my resupply locations and all that stuff. And the day that I went to apply for my permit, the door cracks open and my husband peeks his head in. He's like, so I was thinking about this and I don't want to miss out. Can you add me to the permit? And I was like, Yeah, sure. And I'm so glad that he went. And we did make a deal. I'm like, okay, well, if you come and do this with me for 3 weeks, you do have to give me that opportunity to solo hike because that is something that I'm genuinely interested in doing by myself. He's like, oh yeah, absolutely. We'll figure that out. And so there were moments, and I'm sure whether you're a spouse or a significant other or friends, what have you, there are moments on the trail that, yeah, we were separated by about half a mile, quarter mile, maybe a mile, because sometimes you just need your space. And sometimes you get tired of hiking at that person's pace or hearing them hum stupid songs, and it just gets so annoying. And it was a test. I don't think it was a make or break situation. He definitely put me through the backpacking gauntlet on my first trip. In Yosemite, we decided to do a little backcountry trip, not to veer off from the JMT, but he took me straight up Yosemite Falls first day. Didn't help me pack my bag. I learned very quickly that ounces make pounds, and certain things that you think you need, you really don't. So we're schlepping up Yosemite Falls with a 40-pound pack, and I'm just like, oh, now I see why people really just wear like one outfit. But yeah, on the JMT, it was great. There wasn't really, aside from stupid little bickering back and forth, there wasn't a moment where I regretted saying yes to him invading my permit. But there were challenges for sure with the weather. We had just, I forget what day it was, but we had just left Mammoth area and we knew that there was a monsoon coming through. There was a big rain and a big storm the day before. We had looked at the weather app when we had service because we went down into town for a little bit to do a small resupply. And we're like, okay, we got a couple hour window. We'll be great. So, we're hiking in. We take lunch. We stop at this lake. I can't remember which one it is. And we're having a quick lunch break. And one thing that my father did teach me growing up was to really pay attention to the wind and the clouds. And I started noticing a shift in the weather. I started looking at the clouds. They were looking a little bit different. You could feel the temperature dropping, like something was coming. And so I'm like, okay, we should cut our lunch break short and we should just keep going because we still had about probably like 6 or 7 miles to get to our designated camp that day. We were hoping to get to Thousand Island Lakes. So we're going maybe about a half a mile up trail. I just turn around and the sky is just black. So dark. And there were certain areas I'm like, I think we should pitch the tent. I think we should just pitch and wait it out because we were on our way to go over a pass and there's like no protection. It's all granite. You're like a walking lightning rod at that point. And I'm like, I think we should just wait it out. And he's like, no, I think we can make it. I think we can make it. We are like 5 minutes up that stupid trail and the sky just let out. Trail was flooding, quarter-size hail, wind was howling, lightning was striking. It was just a nightmare. We were essentially, there was nowhere where we can hunker down. We were up in the middle of the pass at that point. It was all rock. And so we just had to, pray that we would be safe. And by the time we got down on the other side, we were lucky enough to find a little shelf to pitch a tent. But we were soaked to the bone. My Raynaud started acting up. I was definitely in the early stages of hypothermia. I was not making any kind of sense. And talking a little bit of gibberish, like, I don't know what's going on. And so there was a small moment, because we're both very stubborn. Like, we're like, oh no, we're just going to suck it up and we're going to get through this. But of course, we're not stubborn enough where we're going to risk our livelihood or our health or anything like that. So we're like, we're going to pitch the tent, wait it out, see what happens. Hopefully I can warm back up. If not, we're going to bail. Thankfully, after about 45 minutes, getting all the wet clothes off and stuff, I was able to be warmed back up and good. But it rained for literally 24 hours. We were stuck in that tent for 24 hours and it was just miserable because it just wouldn't let up. And we're like, oh my gosh. So it threw our whole itinerary off. And so we really had to just push through a lot of extra miles. We had to completely scrap one of our camping destinations because even though we probably could have extended our permit just a little bit because of the situation, we did have reservations in Yosemite Valley for lodging. And so it's like, oh, we can't miss our reservation. We have to just power through it and get through it. But I think challenges like that make the adventure. As long as you don't get hurt or you put yourself in a life-threatening situation, it really does add to the memories. And it was such an amazing experience. Like, we were very sad. I mean, we were happy to like get a shower and eat some great food because, after 22 days of dehydrated meals, it gets a little bit old. But we were already talking about wanting to do it again. It was so incredible. And so I looked at my husband when we were finishing it and I'm like, so what'd you say about doing this because you had to prove it to somebody? Do you still have that same belief? Or he's like, shut up. I totally understand now.
And, like you mentioned that after doing the JMT, you wanted to do something solo and you tackled the Grand Canyon of Tuolumne solo, which is rugged, steep, and it's often an isolated trek. I'm wondering what were some of the differences that you saw doing that solo compared to the JMT with your partner? And what did you learn about yourself on that solo trip that you maybe wouldn't have learned if Benji had came?
So with the solo trip, actually the Grand Canyon of Tuolumne was my plan B. When I had set aside the time frame and made the decision, we agreed that, okay, we're going to do the solo trip, or I'm going to do the solo trip. I originally picked Ray Lakes, the region that I centered my book around, because I'm like, okay, I've been wanting to go back. It's a familiar trail, so it might be a great option for me to start my first solo backpacking because, it's a familiar trail. I know what I'm getting myself into, but we also had a pretty gnarly snow season that year too in the Sierra Nevada. And a few weeks before I was supposed to do the trail, I got a letter from the NPS stating that the road that went to the trailhead suffered severe erosion from the storms and it was going to be closed. So they were canceling all permits to that trailhead. And I'm like, no, I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm like trying to scramble around because I already blocked out that week to go do something. And my husband and I had talked about doing the Grand Canyon of Tuolumne. And so I ran it by him. I'm like, hey, so this other plan got squashed, not anything. It was completely out of my control. But what do you think about me doing the Grand Canyon? And he's like, well, I really wanted to do that with you. And I'm like, but it'll be great because, I'll get to go. You've introduced me to so many spectacular trails that you've done before. And now I feel like it's my turn to do something. And then if you want to do it, then I get to show you and share it with you. And he's like, oh yeah, okay, that sounds cool. So I got that permit. And then I was getting a little worried for that one because to access that trail, you have to go in the back way to Yosemite on Tioga Road. And that road typically opens later in the season as well because it's the higher country of Yosemite. So it takes them weeks to plow through the road, and they weren't quite getting through yet because of the amount of snow that was up there. And I'm like, no, like this can't happen again. This is my plan B. I don't have a plan C. Like this has got to work. And so I'm like, okay, it's going to work. It's going to be fine. And they did clear the road about a week before I was supposed to go. And then there were whispers that they weren't going to open that trailhead yet though, because that trailhead is accessible through a campground. So you have to go into the campground and then the trailhead's in the back of that campground. And like, oh, well, we're not going to open White Wolf because there's still a lot of storm debris and we don't know what's going to happen. And so there was still this giant question mark of, am I going to be able to do this? And then finally, a couple days out, they decided, okay, yes, we're not going to open the campground, but the trailhead will be open. So those who have permits, you can go. And so for me, it was really, really exciting. I don't want to say it was scary because I was up for the challenge, but it was pretty thrilling to be able to go just a couple days after they opened the trailhead. So I was going to be one of the first people of the season to get out there on the trail after this massive snowstorm. Now, some may say, oh, it's kind of dumb. Do you really want to put yourself in the unknown as to what's going to be out there? Hell yeah, I do, because that's part of it. I really wanted to challenge myself. I really wanted to test the skills that I've learned or read about. It's one thing to know how to do something. It's another thing to actually be able to apply that in real life situations. And through hiking and backpacking with my husband, we always split the chores in the camp duties. So somebody would set up the tent while somebody would go and filter water, or somebody would cook dinner while if we were in an area where we could have a campfire, somebody was going and getting the wood. But when you're by yourself, there is nobody to dictate certain chores to. Like you have to do it all yourself. So I'm like, okay, it's going to be all me. So I get out there and I'm probably like 50 yards up the trail and there's this massive black bear that's in front of me. And it's cool because I carry a camera with me because I like to dabble in nature photography too. And so I'm like, oh yeah, this is awesome. I'm taking the pictures. And so that was a really awesome moment. And then I get a little deeper in, maybe about a mile in, and there's no trail. There's so many downed trees from the winter storm because the park rangers, even though they opened up the trail, they hadn't had any time to go in and do trail maintenance. So there's like downed trees everywhere. And so it was a huge test for me to really see how good I actually am at route finding and navigating. The first day, I ended up impaling my leg on a downed tree as well. I was trying to stop, and it wasn't anything terribly bad. It only went in about a half an inch, but it was enough to be like, oh, just having to hurdle all of the trees. And there were several avalanche fields that I had to kind of climb over and be like, okay, like, am I going in the right direction? I don't know, but I'm going to hope and trust that I'm doing the right thing. And the trail was like that for most of the way. I spread it out. It was like 60, I think it was like 64 miles or something like that. I spread it out over 6 days. So I spent 5 nights, 6 days out there. And I only saw maybe a half a dozen people the entire time. I think because a lot of people, I mean, it's not a popular trail to begin with, but I think because the snow season was so late, a lot of people kind of bailed on their plans because they're like, yeah, I'm not dumb enough to go out there. And here I am like, just going on. And I wasn't afraid at all. A lot of people have asked me, like, is it scary to be out there by yourself? One, I love the outdoors. I welcome nature. I like to photograph them. So I got really excited when I saw the bear, when a lot of people are like, I'd be running the other way. And I'm like, no. I think for me, if I had to worry about one thing being out there, it's honestly other people. For me, strangers are more terrifying than a bear. But I've never had a situation where I felt uncomfortable or kind of had an eerie feeling about somebody. And there was a moment on the trail where it was a hard lesson for me because I'm coming down the backside and it's on day 5. So I'm heading to my final camp. And on that side of the trail, there's still a lot of snow left over because it's shadowed and because it's higher elevation on that side as well. There was still a lot of ice fields and snow fields. And I knew that there was going to be. So I brought my micro spikes with me. And I was descending a little bit and it was only maybe 80 yards. It wasn't that far and it wasn't that steep. And there was no like drop off. So I know like there'd be no fatal fall. Like if I slipped, I wouldn't just shoot off the edge of a mountain to my doom. So I'm like, it looks okay. I don't need to take my spikes out of my bag and sit down and put them on my shoes and all of this. So I make it about 75% of the way down and my foot just hits slick ice and I just go, whoop, and I slide and I slid and I came about a couple inches to hitting my head on a boulder. And that was a harsh reality shock that, okay, I'm just not going to be lazy anymore. And yeah, I wouldn't have fallen off a cliff because there's no cliff. But if I would have hit that rock, I might not have woken up. And so that was pretty scary. And I told my husband afterwards, and he was like, "You did what? Why did you do that? Oh my God, oh my God." And I'm like, well, I lived to tell the tale. It was a lesson that I learned. Stupid decisions like that, and I know better. And I know a lot of people who make mistakes in the wilderness, we always know better. But it's a moment of, do I really want to take the extra 10, 15 minutes to make sure that I'm safe? Now I'm like, yeah, that's not even a question. Like it needs to be done. And so that I learned a lot about that. And there was another moment on that trail where I had summited Mount Hoffman, and it's just under 11,000 feet. I think it's like a 10.8. I don't have a fear of heights, but I have a fear of falling. And a lot of people are like, well, isn't that the same thing? No, it's not. It's this weird thing where I could be standing on the highest peak ever. But then I look over just a little bit. And even though I'm completely grounded, I could be shackled to the ground, but something in my brain is like, you're going to fall, even though I know that I'm not. So I wanted to summit this while I was on the trail. And usually when I hike higher peaks, I do have Benji with me. And so there's that helping hand. Like if my knees get a little weak, I know that there's somebody there. And for this trail to the summit, right before the top, the trail stops. So it's a scramble. It's bouldering. You have scree, loose rock to get overward. And it's not really that dangerous per se, but I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to weenie out. Like I'm going to go. And that was really empowering for me too, because I got up there. I didn't have any kind of fears. I got up safely. I spent about 15 minutes up there and then like, okay, it's going to start getting dark. I should go back down to camp. And I couldn't tell you like the amount of excitement that I had and fulfillment that I had just being able to do that by myself. It was like in that moment, I overcame that fear. And so that trip as a whole just taught me so much about myself, of just pushing yourself and overcoming fears, applying lessons that you've read about in real life, knowing that you can do that, but then also just learning hard lessons along the way too. It was such a great experience. And Benji was a little nervous when I went out to do it. And it wasn't because I was going by myself. He's like, look, I know you're capable. I know you're good. I know you're not going to die, hopefully. But his biggest fear in the whole thing was that I would like it so much that I would want to do more solos. He was not wrong. I came home and I'm like, okay, when can I go out again? Where can I go out again by myself? And so we've had this thing where I'm like, okay, at least once a year, even if it's just a weekender, I just got to be free and I got to go out by myself.
Oh, I love that, Tina. What an incredible adventure. I think you're right when you say that when I'm outdoors solo, the biggest concern is not necessarily wildlife, but other people that you encounter in the wilderness areas. But I will say we have a beautiful waterfall trail here in Washington State that unfortunately had a bad fire in 2017. and the Forest Service just hasn't had the personnel in order to clear out all the blowdowns in order to reach the waterfall. It's only maybe half a mile, but that is some of the sketchiest trail navigation I've ever done. Because, yeah, there's been moments where I've done the trail where I'm like, that was pretty close to impaling myself, or that could have been really bad.
Yeah. Part of the adventure. We live to tell the tale.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that I really enjoyed is that you were able to share both experiences on your YouTube channel. And we'll be sure to link those videos on the episode show notes so people can check it out and get a glimpse into both of those adventures. Now, Tina, kind of switching gears, one thing that I love to see is beyond hiking and survival, your biography mentions you're an artist. You've created a platform through your art, Grimm Creations Art, and it's on social media. How does being an artist complement or contrast your identity as an adventurer?
It definitely goes hand in hand. So early on, I had mentioned, I was an adventurous kid with a wild imagination. And one of my biggest influencers in the art world was Jim Henson. I just fell in love with his quirky creatures and how a lot of them related to the outdoors. Fraggle Rock and the Dark Crystal, like they were all immersed in their environment. I went to college and I had studied traditional animation. Unfortunately, life had other plans and I didn't pursue that much further. But when I started really dabbling with sculpting and creature creations, I started seeing a pattern. And it wasn't intentional at first, but everything that I created, I had some found piece that was added to it. My first creature, they're called guardians, and they're actually made out of black walnut shells, the faces. Because I was looking at a walnut shell and I'm like, this kind of looks like a face. Because I'm one of those people that will stare at like stucco on the ceiling or like the clouds and be like, oh, that looks like a dog or that looks like a bunny. And I see faces in like everything. Completely sober, not on drugs. And I had this walnut shell, and I'm like, you know what? This kind of looks like a bird. And so I had some faux fur, and I started making this body. And then I'm like, oh, well, I have all these feathers because I'm kind of like a collector when I'm outside too. It drives my husband nuts sometimes because I'll see a bird feather and I'll pick it up. I'll see like this cool looking stick and I'll pick it up. And it's gone to the point now where we go on backpacking trips, and I will bring a Ziploc bag specifically for the treasures that I find on trail. So the Guardians, they kind of took shape as their story is nature's protectors. So they're like these little beings that they're sworn to protect the environments that they inhabit. And then I have another creature called a woodlander, and they're from a fictitious planet in a forest called Fee. And they're kind of like an Ewok civilization. So they're these quirky little creatures, and they all have their different roles in their society. Like you have the adventurer, you have the lumberjack, you have the medicine man, all these different side stories that just go specifically for the creatures. But in tying that with the outdoors, I found that every single creature that I create has some form of something that I've brought home from outside or on trail. Like a lot of them have staffs from just sticks that I found. I'm huge on upcycling and repurposing things. So that was another element that I add to my creatures. I think my creations are like a love letter to the outdoors. It's symbolic of how I feel about preserving our wild spaces and embracing things that you find and turning them into something else instead of just throwing it away. And it brings me a lot of joy. I would love to say that I'm a world-renowned doll artist and I make a ton of money, but unfortunately, no, that is not the case. But I do appreciate anybody who supports my little endeavor. I just get a lot of joy out of it. I feel like I can express my creativity from when I was a child in creating these quirky little things. And it's pretty awesome. I love it.
I love seeing the creations that you've been able to share on social media. And we'll be sure to also link that page on the episode show notes so people can check it out and support. Tina, that was it for the regular questions. These last set of questions are questions that we like to ask all our guests that come on the podcast. The first one is when it comes to, a regular summit routine, or maybe it's the end of the hike routine. For a lot of us, it's just packing that favorite snack or drink. For others, it's a moment of zen or reflection. And then for a lot of us, it's also enjoying that favorite meal afterwards. Is there a regular custom or routine that you like to do when you make your destination or when you make it back out?
Yeah, so there is this one thing that became a tradition years ago when my husband first hiked the Ray Lakes Loop. It's actually how I got my trail name too, which is Bear Moon. Now, I spell it bear as in the animal, but it actually means bear as in nude. Started doing nude meditation while I was on trail. And I got the trail name because there was a couple across the pond where I was doing my thing that saw it, and we ran into them the next day, and they're like, "Did you happen to do this one thing?" And I'm like, "Oh, no." They're like, "You're gonna be known as Bear Moon." I'm like, "Okay," and I've embraced it. So it's become a tradition. Every time I go out, there is a thing about, like, planting or rooting or whatever you may wanna call it, just stripping everything away, and it's kinda metaphorical too, where, yes, I'm, stripping clothing away, but I'm also in the moment in the meditation, I'm stripping away all of the stresses that have bothered me, things that just really don't matter, and I just exist in the moment. I'm out there doing the meditation thing, and it could be anywhere from 10 minutes to like 30, 45 minutes. It just really depends, if the weather cooperates. And also, I'm always aware of my surroundings. Like, I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. I'm not doing it for attention. That was just an accident that people actually saw me. But when you're out there, you never really know. And I said, I don't do it for the attention. I do it for myself. Funny thing is, tracing back to Outlast really quick, that was one thing that I had added in my application. And about 2 weeks in, the producer came up to me and they're like, "So, we see that you do this thing. Would you be willing to do it on the show? No pressure." And I was like, screw it. I mean, I admitted that I do it. I'm going to have a talk with the guys first because I don't want any kind of weirdness, even though I knew that they wouldn't be around when it happened. I just didn't want it to change the dynamic. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, it's totally fine. You want to do it? Fine." And I told them too, like, well, the weather has to be good too. I'm not going to be sitting outside when it's like 20 degrees because you guys want to get this shot. And it happened the next day. It was like 45 degrees. There was no rain. So we did it. They got the drones out. It was like a female crew. Like they did everything that they could to make me feel comfortable, which was nice. And that never saw the light of day either. So, whatever. It's good thing, bad thing. I don't know. But getting back to your question, yeah, the tradition that I have now being out in the outdoors is kind of planting myself in that meditation just for a little bit because it is part of my proverbial reset button when I'm in the outdoors. It really does help me kind of cleanse everything that's been building up to that hike. So that has become a tradition of mine. And I think I've also developed into my husband as well. We have a routine after we finish a through hike where it's either pizza and beer or burger and a beer. I know everybody fantasizes about food on the trail, even on the show. We talked about food so much that even the crew was like, "Are you guys enjoying self-torturing yourself? Because you talk about food all the time." But, when you're in the outdoors and you're a hiker, you can relate. It's satisfying and it's happy to talk about food and what are you going to eat. And so whenever we finish a hike together or I go by myself, it just depends on where we're at. But it's always pizza and beer or burger and a beer. Hands down. It's got to be one of the two. It's the reward after the journey. It's just so good.
And I'm right there with you. That last day hiking out from a backpacking trip, that's all that I'm talking about. That's all on my mind. And yeah, those are my two choices, depending on where I'm at. It's either pizza and beer or burger and a beer.
Oh, I was to say, I don't know what it is about those combinations, but it just hits so good afterwards.
Oh yeah, some of the best meals after a long backpacking trip for sure. The next question is about your pack list. And we always like to ask our guests, is there a luxury item that you tend to pack that falls outside of the essentials? And not necessarily like cost-wise, but more something that brings you comfort and joy, but isn't necessarily an essential item.
Yeah, so I bring a little bear. His name is Humphrey Flapjack. And he's actually multiple functioning. I mean, he's my travel companion, but also it's a pencil pouch. So it's a zipper pouch, but I have him hanging off the side of my backpack and he serves as my first aid kit. So I don't really need a plushy teddy bear with a pocket to put my drugs in, ibuprofen and stuff like that. But, because I joke that he's my drug mule. I don't need that. I mean, I could just have a Ziploc bag or any other traditional first aid kit. But nope, I have a stuffed teddy bear that hangs off of my bag. And it just brings me a lot of joy. It's a great conversation starter on trail. It brings a lot of smiles to people that I pass. Like, "Oh, I love your little teddy bear." On the JMT, we didn't see one bear, not one bear over 22 days. And we always had this running gag, like the only bear that we saw was Humphrey hanging from my backpack. And there was one pack train cowboy he must have been having a bad day because he was making fun of me for having it. He was like, why are you that dumb that you would carry that extra weight? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, says the guy sitting on a horse, not even walking the trail. Like, come on. So that is my one must-have item. It is functional, like I said. It does serve as my first aid bag, but there are more traditional pieces that I could carry that would be a little lighter, but what's the fun in that?
I gotta ask, is there a picture of it that we could share with the audience on your social media?
Yes, there is. You might have to do a deep dive, but I will definitely find it for you and send it to you, or maybe I'll just create a new post with them.
Now, this last one, Tina, is, we're recording this at the end of 2025. The episode's going to come out at the beginning of 2026. Are there any hiking or travel goals that you have for the new year, or anything exciting on the horizon that you could share with us?
Yes. So the trip that Benji and I have planned for next year is we are going to go to Kauai and hike the Nepali coast, hoping that I get a permit. I have to apply for one in February, but we already booked the plane ticket. We were supposed to do that for our honeymoon in 2019, but we were on a very tight budget, so we didn't end up taking a honeymoon. So now we're in a position that we can actually go and do that. So we're really excited to get on trail and experience that. It's going to be, shorter than what we're typically used to doing, but it's supposed to be incredible and beautiful, and we're really stoked for that. Again, fingers crossed we get the permit. I know they're highly sought after. Knock on wood, I don't want to jinx myself, but when I've gone for a permit, I've always had the luck to get it. So fingers crossed on that one. There will probably be a Sierra trip filtered in there somewhere. I always go out there, whether it be by myself or Benji and I, but we usually kind of do those on a whim. And other than that, just look out for my book. That is definitely going to be a big thing for me for next year. And I'm hoping, I say this very loosely, but I'm shooting for 2027 to possibly do the PCT, but that's going to really depend on my mom's situation at home. But right now I'm setting the goal for that. So I'm excited to see and start planning for that and hoping that can come to life as well.
What a great 2026 and potentially 2027 that's coming up. And you're going to have a blast on the Nepali coast. I believe Oregon and Big Sur have some beautiful coastlines, but some of the best coastlines in the world, I think, are on that Nepali coast. And I think you're just going to have an absolute amazing time there on Kauai. And looking forward to seeing the pictures from your guys' trip. Now, this last section of the podcast, Tina, is the this or that questions. We're going to give you 2 hiking related topics and you just choose which one you prefer out of the 2. You're more than welcome to say both or neither. We did add some new ones for season 13, but the first one is, if you had to choose between these 2, would you choose ascending or descending?
Ascending for sure. I think because you have the excitement of getting to your destination and just the payoff at the end. Descending is cool too, but then you have that looming thought of, I'm walking back to the end of my journey. And that's never any fun.
And this next one can be a tough one, especially there in Yosemite Valley, because they have both of them in tremendous fashion. But waterfalls or summits?
Summits. It's a very tough one. I think for me, though, because of, I love Yosemite. It's my favorite place on the planet. I'm kind of spoiled by that because when you're summiting something in Yosemite, especially climbing out of the valley, you're usually passing waterfalls along the way, so you get both.
And then I gotta ask, in order to reach those summits, if you had to choose, would you choose a route with switchbacks or would you rather go straight up?
It depends on the trail and how I feel that day, because sometimes, you're feeling great out of the gate and you're like, all right, I just want to get it done with. I'm going to go straight up and I'm just going to suffer and then it'll be great. But then there are other times too where you want the switchbacks to kind of level it out a little bit and pace it a little bit. But then you get stuck on those switchbacks that never seem to end. And then that becomes its own form of torture because it's like one of those carnival tunnels where you keep thinking you're reaching the end or like a false summit and you're not really there. You just beg for it to be over. So they both can suck and they both can be rewarding.
And this next one is our most controversial one, but trek poles or freehand?
I will admit that when I first got into backpacking, I was freehand. I'm like, I don't need those stupid sticks. Like, I'm totally fine. And then when I started to plan for the JMT and doing more research, I'm like, maybe trekking poles do have their benefits. And when I started doing the shakedown trips for my gear, I'm like, yeah, I don't know why I never used these before with a heavy pack, because they really do help distribute the weight and they help keep you on course if certain trails get a little tricky, to help ground your feet. So I am team poles now for sure.
And this next one, Tina, is about your footwear. Do you use trail runners or traditional hiking boots?
So it kind of falls back with the trekking pole question too. I started in boots. I did several of my first through hikes in boots. And then again, when researching for the JMT, the topic of trail runners came up about how they dry faster and they're easier on your feet and they're lighter. And I'm like, okay, as a runner, I could see the difference, with the running shoes or what have you. So I invested in a pair of Topos, and I will never go back to hiking boots ever again, unless I'm like mountaineering in snowy conditions and I really need the thicker soles and the warmth of the boots. But yeah, trail runners have definitely been a game changer in my through hiking.
And then these next couple ones, Tina, I think are our hardest ones. The first one being, between these two types of trails, would you choose a loop trail or an out and back trail?
I think if I was able to choose, depending on where I went, because I've done them both, would be a loop trail. Just because you're constantly seeing something different. And I'm not saying that if you do an out and back, there are times when I've done that and I'm like, oh, this perspective looks completely different coming back the opposite direction. But I think for the loop, you're guaranteed different views and it feels like a continuous adventure instead of adventuring, coming to that end and then turning around and going back. So if I have the opportunity to do a loop where I want to go, that's usually where I aim for.
And this next one is, between these two types of hikes, would you do a sunrise hike or a sunset hike?
I like them both. They're both equally beautiful. Sunrise is great because wildlife is usually more active, but they can be really active at night too, depending on where you are. But it's just something about hiking in the morning, and seeing the sun come up and having that cool air and everything's super quiet. But then at night, seeing the sunset and hearing like the insects come out and the frogs starting to peep, and they're both magical. I don't think that's something that I would have a preference which one I would like better.
And this next one's another tough one. I think it's one of our toughest ones. Spring wildflowers or fall colors?
If I was picking one of those, I would generally say both. They both have their own magic in each season. But for me, being in California, where I primarily do my hiking, I would probably say spring flowers, because California does tend to get dry and brown very quickly, and it really changes the dynamic of the landscapes. And we don't really get much fall. I mean, we do, but again, I love both. But if I would have to pick one, I would say spring flowers.
And then this next one's new for season 13, but when it comes to carrying your water, do you use water bottles or a water bladder?
Now I do water bottles. I did do water bladders. And the great thing about through hiking and backpacking over the years is you're constantly evolving, changing your gear, learning what you like, what you don't like. And when I started, it was the water bladder because it seemed to be convenient. Oh, it's in my bag. Oh, there's a little hose right here. But then it becomes a juggling act when you're trying to refill that. You have to pull it out of your pack and fill it up. And then you got to shove it back in and pack everything around. And it just becomes really tedious. And so I love the water bottles. It's right there. It's convenient. I don't have to unpack my bag when I want to refill it. And so water bottles all the way. Even when I'm going on a day hike and I have my Camelback, I'll pull the bladder out and I'll just stick a water bottle in there.
And then the last one is, if you had to choose between these two types of trail celebrations, or summit celebrations, I should say, would you do a summit beer or a summit snack?
So I do a summit whiskey. I always carry a flask, and it's more times than not Fireball whiskey. And so that's always been my summit reward. I'll pull out the flask and have a shot or two. And a lot of times I like to enjoy the sunset too, because I'm constantly snacking on the trail. I'm not drinking on the trail. I mean, people can, and I am not judging if you do that. But yeah, summit whiskey shot for sure.
Well, that was it, Tina, for the this or that questions. For folks that want to follow your journey in 2026, where are some of the places they can find you at, both on social media and online?
So social media, I'm active on Facebook, but more so on Instagram. So that's probably the main point of contact on Instagram. Both are under Tina Grimm. My art page is also Grimm Creations Art on Instagram. I also have an Etsy shop that you can link through Instagram as well. I do have a YouTube page. You can find it under Tina Grimm. And that's about it. I'm not into TikTok. I'm sorry, I'm just not. I had a Twitter forever, but I don't think I've touched that in ages. So Instagram is probably my main contact.
and we'll be sure to link all those in the episode show notes so people can check it out. Tina, it has been an absolute blast speaking with you and hearing about all your adventures, both on the trail, on the show, and I can't wait to see what 2026 has to offer for you. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to speak with us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you again for having me. I've really enjoyed our conversation. It has been a treat.
And that brings us to the end of this episode alongside Tina. We extend a heartfelt thanks to her for joining us on the podcast. Be sure to follow her on Instagram at Tina Grimm. And for more, be sure to check out the episode show notes. This episode of Hikes and Mics was produced by Jordan Smith. Be sure to follow her adventures on Instagram at jordan.journeys. New episodes will drop every Monday throughout the winter hiking season, with the occasional Friday bonus episodes along the way. To make sure you never miss out a moment of these inspiring trail stories, hit that follow or subscribe button. Your support truly keeps the community going through every season. Don't forget to connect with us on Instagram at Hikes and Mics. That's where you'll find behind-the-scenes episode visuals, my own winter hiking adventures, and plenty more to keep the cold weather stoke alive. As we wrap up today's journey, remember, even when the trails are quiet and the mountains are blanketed in snow, the spirit of adventure is still very much alive. So tread those happy trails, stay warm out there, and keep exploring. Until next time, my fellow hikers, happy hiking. This episode's music was created by Ketsa. Follow along with him on Instagram at Ketsa Music. This episode is brought to you by Ursa Minor Outfitters. Folks, I'm absolutely in love with my loon mug. It's handmade, it's an absolute piece of art. Whether it's at the office or at the house, people keep asking to check it out. If you're not a loon fan, they also have other beautiful mugs for wildlife fans of moose, bears, and eagles. They specialize in products highlighting the outdoors and local pride through quality design by local artists. They've even started expanding into items beyond mugs, like apparel, dog accessories, and soon candles and more. They also try to partner and highlight other small businesses, and in some cases, forgo profits in lieu of charitable giving to help their community, such as the dog rescue. So check them out, ursaminoroutfitters.com, and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for our four-legged hiking partners, they also have a portable silicone dog bowl and also a sweet over-the-collar dog bandana. Go check them out, ursaminoroutfitters.com, and don't forget to enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order.